So Rolex have finally addressed the situation. They've shown us that they're aware that we're not happy, that none of the large community of Rolex buyers or watch enthusiasts who'd like to become Rolex buyers, we're all not happy, and Rolex is fully aware of that. Now what's interesting is they don't care. Now before we continue, I'd like to cover this video's sponsor, the Piguet Son Astronomia X1 watchwinder. So this triple axis watchwinder essentially behaves kind of like a tourbillon would in a regular watch. The idea is to keep it moving in the same manner that a watch would on your wrist and not just in one axis or one plane of motion. So this is three-dimensional in the way it turns. And the construction itself is solid metal and glass for the dome that covers it. So the Astronomia X1 has 3 modes of operation, all in which the winder rotates the piece for 2 minutes and then pauses for 8 minutes, and then the cycle continues. So here's the link for the Piguet Son watchwinder. Do check it out. It's also in the description. And when you go to the site, you can get 10% off if you use the code Piguet10, but it's a generic code. I don't get something from it. So by addressing the whole Rolex shortage situation, Rolex have just shown us that we've been heard, but they also want us to know that they don't care about new customers, they just care about their existing customers. So I'm using Hodinkee's article to recite exactly what the response is. Now Rolex have gone to say, the scarcity of our products is not a strategy on our part. Now this has been spoken about for a long time. Earlier this year there was a video by Tokkante, I believe that's the name of the channel. He goes over how an executive at Rolex did in fact state that limited production was not a tactic that Rolex employs. They just apparently can't meet consumer demand. But here's the strange thing. Rolex produces 1 million watches or more per year. I don't think the consumer demand is that high. That's actually still quite a lot, even if you consider the entire world and the population. Even if you look at the 0.01% that can buy Rolex watches, it's still high for it to be more than 1 million watches, and still none of the pieces are reaching collector hands. Now that's odd, but the thing is, saying that they can't produce any more watches than they're currently doing, well, that's understandable. Rolex have 4 factories in Switzerland, and all watches are made in Switzerland, and they have very high quality standards. As we do know, almost every watch that leaves the factory is mostly perfect, if not some very unique QC failure like a number being upside down or something, but the watches are pristine and perfect when they leave the factory. So that's very understandable. Rolex saying that they do not want to compromise quality standards, all of that, nothing new, very acceptable. We agree, as watch enthusiasts, we're happy with that. But the thing is, them saying they can't do anything about it because they're at max production is not the response the watch community needs. We kind of know that they're producing a lot of pieces and they do have limits, but that's not what we care about. What the watch community cares about is the distribution within the production. So the hot models, of course, are the most underproduced ones, and that's quite evident based on market trends and the values of the watches rising so astronomically. It's very obvious that they do not produce that many watches that people want. So they've skirted around this issue very delicately. They simply have not addressed what needed to be addressed and what still needs to be addressed. And that's kind of pointless. I don't get why they decided to make this grandiose statement or acknowledge the frustration that the entire watch community talks about when we mention Rolex, but they also just want to do it very passively, which is kind of disappointing. I think it really was pointless of them making the statement or addressing it, because now they've just simply skirted around the issue and they've made that obvious as well. So while they love to say that they don't artificially limit production, they're very careful about what they're actually doing, which is limiting production of the models that people want. They have enough capacity, I think, to produce a lot more of the stainless steel models, but yet they don't, because the margins are, of course, greater on the gold, platinum, all the precious metals. They have much higher margins on those, and they really want to push existing Rolex buyers into those watches instead of the steel pieces, because the margins matter. That's their bottom line. And by carefully avoiding this issue and not mentioning the sheer amount of Lady Datejust they make, who are all these people that are buying Lady Datejust? I seriously don't know if there are that many female watch enthusiasts that want Lady Datejust. Most of the female watch enthusiasts you see in the watch community are very interested in contemporary sizes, something from 36 to 40, and I don't see the sheer volume of the Lady Datejust that are being produced actually going to those that are asking for it. I think it's quite disappointing to see them simply try to appease those buyers that they have that are currently purchasing a lot of nonsense in order to get a few stainless steel pieces or a few desired watches. And this acknowledgement really shows that they don't care about ADs pushing people to buy nonsense. And as long as Rolex gets their margins out of this, the ADs can just go about it however they want. Rolex also mentioned that the allocation of pieces is decided at the AD level. So it's up to each AD who they want to give the pieces to. And they said that the waiting lists are not something that Rolex Switzerland, the ones that produce the watches, really consider. It's just, so essentially what Rolex is saying is ADs can do whatever they want. They don't have to follow any list. They don't have to do anything chronologically. They can just handpick the people they like and give them the watches they want. So overall, is there a solution to any of this? Quite obviously not, because Rolex doesn't care. If Rolex cared, there could be solutions, but they're the hottest watch brand, and they've kind of always been the hottest watch brand. At least they're the most well-known, and that's all that matters for them right now, because they're at the top of the food chain when it comes to the entire watch industry. So they don't really need to care. It's just that they have to be aware that this growing frustration with the brand is not all that beneficial. Now you see a lot of Rolex customers, potential Rolex customers, trickling to Omega. And that's kind of obvious because, as you've seen recently with rumors of Omega discounts drying up, that's quite evident that Omega is doing exceptionally well. I think they're doing better than ever before. And that's partly because Rolex buyers can't get Rolexes. So Omega is the next hot thing. So if this continues for maybe another decade or so, I think Omega would take up a very large market share. Might not just be Omega, just a lot of brands together would take up a larger market share of the entire watch industry, and I'm quite sure Rolex would not be happy about that. So while they're at the top now, I don't think this continuing procedure. I'm very interested to hear what you guys think about this and what solutions can you offer. Just let me know in the comments below. And do you think this is going to snowball to a point where Rolex has to take measures, let's say in 5 years from now? Or do you think they're never going to sort this issue out and people will just find interest in other brands? I'm very curious to know what you think. Let me know in the comments below. And thank you for watching this video. See you in the next one. Cheers.